This is the Marriage Podcast, and I'm your host, Alexandra Stockwell. I'm a physician turned relationship and intimacy expert, and I specialize in showing couples how to have incredible, passionate relationships. I myself have been married for 25 years. My husband and I have 4 children and full professional lives, and we've created an amazing relationship. If you want to deepen your understanding of your own relationship and learn to access new heights of emotional, sensual, and erotic intimacy, you're in the right place because I will show you how. Let's dive in. Hey everyone, this is Alexandra, and I'm going to introduce you to 2 phenomenal people that I am literally just meeting. The 3 of us are all masters in intimacy, and one of the reasons that I'm starting this way is so you can hear the way we begin our relationship, our conversation. I'll start by saying that I was in a clubhouse room and I heard Tah speak, and my breath stopped in the best way, because just the way that the Eskimos have so many different words for snow and the ancient Egyptians had like 40 words to describe heaven, in general, I think in our culture, we don't really have too many words to tease apart the different nuances and truths within intimacy. But when you hear Tah speak, it sounds like we do, because he has such a precise vocabulary in that arena. The other thing I want to say is that as soon as I heard him speak in this clubhouse room, I knew that his woman had to be deep, profound, remarkable in her own right, because knowing that he was partnered, there just was no way that she was not also phenomenal. So that is my genuine introduction, and I'd love to welcome Tah and Kole Whitty and invite you to respond any way you like, and also give enough logistical biographical details so people can place you on the landscape as they listen. Do you want to
Well,
go first, Tah, since I heard your voice
well,
first?
sure. Well, thank you for such an amazing, wonderful, brilliant introduction. I am so grateful that you see me in such a light. And I've been recently observing many people observing me in very similar fashions, and something that I didn't accept until recently, that I had a gift of connection. I had a gift of being what I was told in human design, an alpha person who is able to really help people connect the dots together. So thank you so much for such an amazing introduction. I'm an intimacy coach, and I had a long stint where I was helping people move through a lot of different processes, and I did not consider myself a coach. And I really leaned into it, and as I leaned into it, people leaned into me further, and I became intimate with what it is to be an intimacy coach. And so once I started to pull that in, everything started to become really, really awesome. And my type of intimacy is about sovereign intimacy. I call it sovereign intimacy. And it's about sovereignty in your intimate space. It's the perception of your intimacy, the crafting of your intimacy, the participation in your intimacy. It's all from a space of awareness and your influence as an individual. And then when we are all sovereign in our intimate spaces and we come together, that is when we are our most powerful as a network of human beings on this planet. Is when we are sovereign in that space together. When we don't have to take from each other or step on each other, we are participating from a space of mutuality. And so, I work in that space. I work in a space of helping people with psychedelics as well. I work with people on intimacy in psychedelics, and that doesn't mean having intimate relations as far as sex, but building the intimate connection, the deep, intricate connection with the self, with the environment, with your food processes, your mood situations, your emotions, your societal constructs of family, of gender, of nationality, all of these things, becoming intimate with those spaces. And so that's where my intimacy dwells. And that's a little bit about me. I practiced nursing in New York City for 25 years. 23 of those years I worked in emergency medicine, and I learned a lot about the human organism and how intimacy plays an extreme role in everything that we do, and that shame is the biggest blockade to our intimacy with ourselves and the things around us. And so I learned how shame actually affects the human organism by being detached from itself and other things conceptually and physiologically. So in that space, I also was a touring musician. I toured around the world, around the United States, around Europe, parts of Australia, with my music, and I learned about different people and different cultures from all over the world, and how we are all connected in very many ways. the most important way that we are connected is in how we can bond and how we have been utilizing shame to keep us disconnected worldwide. And so it's been my mission to help people unplug themselves from shame and plug themselves into a deep, deep intimacy with themselves and the things and the people around them. And in my path, through my music career, I actually met this amazing woman, Cole, who became my partner, my greatest homie, my friend, my lover, my everything, my business partner. She is the bee's knees, the cat's meow, the cat's pajamas. She's all of these things, and she's the most amazing person in my life who I craft intimacy with on a daily basis. And it's just nothing short of amazing to be supported and to be in partnership with such an amazing, beautiful, wonderful being who just celebrated her birthday yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Yay.
And so I celebrate every moment of my life, and becoming intimate with that celebration is something that is an ongoing process for me. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay, amazing. And I feel like the truth of your intention and accomplishment is evident in how you listen to him, Cole. I'm not gonna try to give words to it, but there's a way that you're not just waiting until it's your turn to speak. You really drop in and listen, although I'm guessing that most of what Tah said you've heard before, but you're not listening as though, oh, yeah, like I know. The way that you took him in, even though you've heard it likely thousands of times, it was really beautiful. And tell us what you want us to know about you.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, I never get tired of hearing him speak. We're ever evolving beings. And so every time I hear him speak, I hear some other version or it resonates different. And I think that through this intimacy with each other, that it's been also the intimate relationship we've developed with ourselves together, that as I hear his newest evolution of process, I'm getting to know him a little bit deeper. And so it never gets boring. I think that for us, we stay in a very childlike curiosity of, oh, what makes you say that? Oh, who told you that? Or where does it come from? And a lot of that has come from what he was talking about in dismantling shame and recognizing how that's held us back in the past. And, my part within this integration of ourselves in this unification that is called a marriage, a lot of our work came through the exploration of psychedelics and a therapeutic healing capacity that got us to know the depths of ourselves and helped us to achieve a level of transparency and authenticity together. And then also holding each other, not necessarily in accountability so much as just in support to reflect if there's something we're looking to grow into or something we're looking to expand on. And so for me, I didn't know what intimacy was before Tah Whitty. I knew what it was to date someone. I knew what sex was. I knew what connection was. But the intricate connection that is intimacy, I didn't have any context for. I didn't have any experience with. So there was no way to even recognize that was what was happening. It was the listening that you're reflecting is for me what intimacy is to fully be present in what's happening. And if you see him, he's beautiful. So even if you weren't,
he is.
it's
Well, thank
still a great view. So even if you were thinking about doing laundry or dishes or something else, it still is stunning to look at. So it never gets old.
Okay, amazing. In most of my other interviews, there's a question that I always ask, but it's almost like we spend the interview getting to where I ask that question towards the end. And it's the question I just want to ask the two of you right now. Cole, in introducing yourself, you've kind of given an answer, but I'm going to ask you to go further. So I absolutely believe that relationships are the ultimate vehicle for personal growth. And I would love to hear from each of you what you've learned about yourself as a result of being in this marriage. And I know, Cole, you talked about knowing what intimacy is. And so I'd love for you to give us a moment. Let us experience that awareness with you.
Well, I can give you one. There's been many, but I'll go with the one that came to mind most, just popped right in. We had a moment when we were dating. We talked about the concept that if you ever don't want to be here, because we would say, what happens when? We know what some of our past propensities or coping mechanisms or what traumas can come up. So we would do this thing called what happens when? What happens when this come up? What's our course of action? How can we be supportive? And so we had the discussion around, if you don't want to be here, I won't chase you. If you say that's what you want is to leave, I won't chase you or convince you otherwise. If you think you don't deserve this, then I'll never let you go. And so we had that conversation, and the moment that I felt true intimacy was in a moment we were in New York City. We were in the subway. We got into just like an energetic heightened state. And so I turned to walk away from him because that's been one of my patterns, is to leave. I was the runner. And
you mean because it was so intense, so beautiful, your response was to
really
feel overwhelmed.
Yeah. It was really confronting, because when you realize that the other person has done as much work on themselves as you have, and you recognize now that in a moment it actually is you, that's one of the most confronting moments. Forget when there's something wrong with somebody else. When the other person's holding space and going, look, I got to be honest, this is not my shit. This isn't mine. And you recognize that's true. That's tough. And so it was one of those moments that it was self-judgment, self-shame, self-hate actualizing. And so I turned to leave because emotionally flooded, I shut down. So my thing is to get out of here, go somewhere safe in a cave somewhere and, figure out myself. And he grabbed my hand as I turned to walk away, and he looked me dead in the eyes. And he said, if this is what you want, I will not chase you. And I had this moment, the sirens in my head are like, what are you doing? Cole, no, don't leave. But my old habits were they were at the helm driving. And in that moment was when I really saw him seeing me, and that he was not playing. This wasn't a game. And we had this discussion. And so the only thing I could just kind of like squeak out was no, that it wasn't what I wanted. And so he just pulled me in closer. He said, then let's go home. And we didn't say anything else. And he just kind of held me. And that was one of the most intimate moments of my entire life, because to feel that level of acceptance and non-judgment, and it felt like someone fighting for me without overpowering me or trying to dominate or to be in control or shame me. He merely
fix you.
Yes, exactly. To just know that I didn't have the words in that moment, and he didn't need me to have the words. He was just supporting what I needed. And we went home. And then as I down regulated and was able to share more what was going on, we talked through it. I never had anyone show up like that for me in a way that I felt safe enough to receive it. And it showed the work I'd done on myself, but that was my first experience of true intimacy.
Thank you. Tah, what have you learned about yourself?
Oh, I've learned a ton. One of the things that I really learned was that a relationship is not the challenging part of a relationship, of a functional, what I would call a really functional relationship, is not the relationship itself. It is your own work that is the issue. And through my relationship with this amazing soul here, I've learned a lot around my saboteur and the way I had kept people away from me because I was afraid of being abandoned. And so I would do things in my past relationships to get myself into a space where the other person would leave and I'd be safe. I'd be safe from them. I would either keep them just at arm's length, or they would leave, and I would be safe from being abandoned because they didn't love me. You know what I mean? It would be I
do. It's a little bit like the phenomenon. I don't know if this is familiar to either of you or not, but one of the great benefits of being pregnant is you don't have to worry about getting pregnant.
Right.
And it's a little bit that principle that if you keep people far enough away, you don't have to worry about them being close and leaving.
Yeah. And this relationship, we've been in this for almost 9 years now?
8.
Yeah, 8 years. We've been in this relationship for a while. And this is the first relationship that I had not stepped outside of and had sexual relationships with other people. And the very first in my life that I have been in a space of fidelity. And I did a lot of lying. I did a lot of stuff in the past where I had to actually posture all the time for multiple people. And it caused a great amount of discrepancy in my body from health, right? A great pull away from health. And so I decided when I came into this relationship that I wanted to be in a space of health. I wanted to be in a space of expansion, growth, and I wanted to heal all of the past stuff. And so Kole told me when we got together, she was like, look, there's one thing that I want from this relationship, and that's honesty. And that's the same thing I told her. I wanted honesty. And I had said that in the past, but other people were not able to be honest with me. So I got into a space of being dishonest. And so I got into a space where Kole, the way Kole loved me and the way she accepted me, I had a hard time believing it. And I was just waiting for the other shoe to drop and for her to leave. And so there's never been I've never been in a space in my life to have a deficit of women trying to get into the position of the main situation.
Never.
Never. And I'm I and this is a space that I accept. I am blessed in that space. And I didn't acknowledge that before this relationship. I didn't even see it. She's the one who brought it to my attention.
I was like, bro,
Her and a couple of my friends in the past were like, bro, you have no issues landing any kind of a mate or anything like that. And I have never had this type of situation in my life. And so it was frightening for me to be fully accepted and to be able to be honest and not have to lie, because that's what I was used to. And so there came a situation where there was a woman that I had known for a long time, and I leaned into stepping outside of this situation, and I was frightened. And we had went to Peru and we got married, and I it was just this weight on me. And I never fully explored that situation, and I did. There was some lightweight stuff that happened between me and this woman, and I had told Cole, I said, I have something that I want to tell you that's tearing me up inside, and I'm afraid that you're going to leave. I'm afraid that I'm going to actualize all of the fears and stuff that I have. And she was like, I want to know, tell me. And she accepted me, and she said, I'm here. I'm not going anywhere. What do you need? And she supported me in this space, right? And so she said to me, she said, look, I'll have my bouts of doubt in this situation and whatever, and you're still going to have to deal with your stuff, and I'm here to support you in whatever comes up for you. And I had never experienced anything like that before. And so in dealing with my old patterns of shame, my old patterns of guilt, my old patterns of self-destructive behavior, I was in a rut for a while. And this woman checked in on me every day. She supported me every day, even when she was in her space of doubt around the situation. Even when the situation caused her to question herself, she never faltered. And then she allowed me to support her in her feelings of doubt around herself and all of this stuff. And so I got to see that we had these two individual situations that were interdependent, but not dependent upon each other. And so we could support each other's dynamics and how we felt about the situation without blaming the other person, without assigning a person a space of guilt,
and with boundaries,
and with clear boundaries.
Mhm.
And there were times where Cole had her doubts about me, and she had her feelings, and things would come up, and she would say them to me, and I would hold the space without taking it on as I needed to defend myself, because it wasn't my stuff. And so once I was in a position to hold that space and not take it on as my stuff, I could fully support her. And the same thing with her. She can fully support me in my space. So we are two sovereign individuals in this situation that come together to create a relationship construct. So the relationship construct does not have jurisdiction over us. We craft the relationship construct. And so when I learned
daily, no less.
Yeah.
Daily.
Daily, momentarily, we do this every moment. We are in sovereign space over our own situations, and we bring that together to have a cohesive situation. So that's part of the magic of the relationship that I've learned from this particular relationship with Cole, is that having that sovereign space over my own individual relationship, that is the work. This relationship is easy. We have fun, and the things that we have crafted fun into our relationship, connection into our relationship. Things that we've excluded from our relationship is self-destruction and destruction of the other person, blame game situations, expectations, sacrifice. All of these things we've excluded from our relationship construct. And so when Cole wants to do something, Cole does whatever she wants to do, and that includes with other people, with other places, how she eats, what she drinks, the things she puts in her body. She's fully sovereign over that situation. If I see something that Cole's doing that causes me a stir in my body or causes me a stir in my mind, I'll ask her first permission, because we are into radical consent. Hey, do you mind if I share something with you about an observation?
Or are you open to hearing my perspective?
Or are you open to it?
Mhm.
And these are the things that we do. We bring these things to the surface. And if she's not in a space, because there are times where she's not in a space, or I'm not in a space to accept it, and the other person will be like, listen, you know what? Now's not the time. Can we talk about this later? And then,
we always come back to it.
Always,
and that's the other important thing.
We always do come back to it. And so we when we swing that stuff back around, it's never about a clash of situations. It's about me honoring myself, me honoring Cole, and then us coming together to honor ourselves and each other. And so that sovereignty of individuality is something that I've learned from this relationship that has been absolutely magnificent with us. with our interactions with our family members, with our interactions with our clients, and the things that our clients have been doing since we've started to function in this capacity have been outstanding. It's been absolutely amazing.
The fascinating thing is we've always said since the beginning of our relationship that we have an open relationship, but I have never kissed or made out or had sex with anyone outside of Tah, but I could. And it's really that what we came to realize that everything was up for dialogue and conversation. If there was something that we are in deficit of in this relationship, then let's talk about it. If the idea of going outside of us is because something is in deficit, then let's talk about that. If there's something else one of us wants, let's talk about that. We're here to be in support of each other because we love each other regardless of the dynamic that is this marriage.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, one of the things that I'm hearing in what both of you are talking about is something that I think needs tremendous courage, and that is not to distract the other person from their work by bringing our own drama and needing to be center stage. And the way the two of you talk about that is really amazing. The couples that I interview, I am interviewing them because they have remarkable relationships one way or another. And often it's pretty straightforward to talk about challenges in the past and how now things are so much better. And or learnings, like ways of expanding. And the two of you have done that too. But I want to go further on the day-to-day, moment-to-moment evolution. Will you, as two evolved and evolving, profoundly devoted people, man and woman, tell us about either a challenge or some kind of expansion where, without it necessarily being challenging, you just up-leveled or deepened now from the mature place in which you reside in your marriage. Something in the last day, week, month.
I mean, what's your framework here? Because here's the thing, we are completely open.
Completely.
And that's why I say we're open. I mean, we are open and we will talk about anything. So if you're down to hearing some like sex life things, we are happy.
This is an open invitation because mostly it's one thing to have come through a challenging portal and be on the other side and then enjoy that for the rest of your lives. Mm-hmm. It is another thing to know that at any moment you might be on the razor's edge again and need to reinvent and reapply all of the foundational principles that bring you together. And I'm really interested in what happens in mature contexts. In fact, I'll just share one thing. There's a woman in my Facebook group. It's called The Intimate Marriage. Anyone listening, you're welcome to join. And she and her husband have been married for 53 years, and they've had what she describes as a good sex life. And now 53 years in, they recently had this incredible sexual awakening. And I'm really interested in what sexual awakening after 53 years of sex looks like and what
sounds like, tastes like. Tell me about it.
Yes, because these are conversations that aren't being had. And as humans, we learn through imitation. That's why storytelling about relationships is so profound. So there's nothing off the table, except if you talk about something super far out around psychedelics, I need you to okay, you're not. That's not okay.
We actually don't even involve psychedelics in sex, actually, because for us, energies all we believe have their platform for intentionality, and so for us, sex is a psychedelic experience in itself. When you fully allow yourself,
I totally agree with you, to
connect to the cosmos and the body. I mean, all of that for us is a psychedelic experience. So when we talk about things that, for us, sex has been evolution as well. Like when we first got together, it was crazy and all the time and all of this stuff. And then it's also remembering that, or not remembering. And then we hit one point where my trauma started to come up. We were about 4 or 5 years into our relation. I guess it would have been like 4 years. Yeah, like 4 years into our relationship. It was like I was safe for the first time in my life. And in that safety, what that also equaled was, I went from anything is possible in our sex life to completely shut down. Like if we had sex, I'd get a urinary tract infection, like just a lot was coming up.
Yeah.
And so that was a couple year process. But what happened in the interim of that is he developed reluctancy to even like posture or come up to me because he developed almost like a trauma response of, not wanting to trigger me. That was a 2-year process. And so just this week, we had a new breakthrough in our relationship. Was fantastic because something that I just never had real context for was oral sex. I grew up Mormon in Utah. Like, you don't talk about those things. It's like maybe you heard the word blowjob, but that was like the extent of it. And so I didn't have context. And when Tah would tell me what he wanted, my mind would go blank, like complete. I couldn't come up with anything. I'd get into self judgment, then shut down. It'd become emotional. So it became this traumatic thing for this thing that he really has enjoyed his whole life. And so just this last week, we had a heart to heart, and I was like, look, you keep saying that, getting head is this like really intimate experience for you, that you haven't shown me videos. Like, I actually asked to see videos of what you're talking about or what you want, because I can't, like, I literally am unable to pull it up. And he goes, wow, you know what? You're right. And then we talked about the shame of, pornography or anything like that in his upbringing. And so, like a week and a half ago, we finally sat down and he showed me videos of what he has fantasized and what he's imagined. And I'm just saying, I did it.
Didn't just do it.
I've been doing it,
Didn't just
rocking
do it.
it.
So to give you some context, right? I'm gonna backpedal a bit to when I was about 16. And when I was 16, I met a girl that was a couple of years younger than me, who I kind of didn't give me the context of her age. And not that that makes any difference. We were both underage, and we would have sex every day, and we explored some really amazing spaces. And she was the person who introduced me to fellatio, right? She introduced me to oral sex, and it was amazing. And so back and forth between the two of us, it was amazing. And this would go on for hours. Mother would go to work, and we would be at our house like for hours. And this went on for a while. And I ended up breaking it off with this girl because of my self-destructive patterns. And this was the beginning of my self-destructive patterns. And she ended up having she was mad at me, so she went and had sex with my brother. And she called me up one day and she told me, I want to talk to you. And so I went to speak to her, and she told me that she had messed around with my brother, and asked me if I was mad. And I said, no, I can't be mad, because of the way I left. And she asked me if I loved her, and I said, yeah. And she asked me if I enjoyed the oral sex that she performed on me, and I said, I loved it. It was amazing. It was probably the best thing that ever happened to me at that point in my life, and probably most of my life now. And she asked me if I had ever wondered where a girl her age would learn to be able to perform oral sex like that. And I said, tell me. And she told me that her father hated her mother for having a child for him, particularly a black child, because he's a white guy. And so he would bring his friends over on the weekends, and he would have his friends have sex with her and make her perform oral sex on them. And so this is where I learned to get the greatest sexual pleasure in my life, was from such a destructive, heinous, what I would consider a heinous performance on your own child. And so I walked around with a lot of guilt for wanting to have that type of pleasure in my life. And I didn't know what to do with myself, because the women that I was in a relationship, that I would get into relationships with, I wouldn't ask them for it because I was ashamed. And so I would go pay for it. And that was a big thing in my life. And I would go either pay for it, or I would have these short-lived situations with people that I considered unsavory. And this went on for years and years. And my father had a pornography collection in his bedroom, in his lower drawer, and I would sneak in and watch his videos. And that was part of my whole thing around oral sex, was being in the dark about it and watching videos about it and stuff like that. And I didn't watch the videos that much, but the purchasing of sex favors from people was a huge part of my life in my 20s. And it got to a point where I went to meetings for it, and I did all of this this research and studies around it. And it came to a
In
point where,
case people are listening, when you say you went to meetings, I assume you mean 12-step meetings
yeah, I went to a
for
12,
recovery. Okay, yeah,
called
just to be
Sex
clear.
Compulsors Anonymous, SCA,
Yeah.
Sex Compulsors Anonymous. And there I learned that that I really didn't have that much of an issue compared to a lot of other folks. I eventually left that situation because every sponsor that I had was trying to have sex with me. And so it was just more of a toxic situation, and I just didn't want to be a part of it. So there was a stint where I just didn't have sex for a while. And, I came to a conclusion that what I was really looking for was connection. And the connection that I had with this girl was very, very deep. It was very profound. Still to this day is the barometer and gauge for a lot of my sexual activity was this situation when I was a kid that I had so much shame wrapped around. And so this, I mean, and as an intimacy coach, as a person, I am always peeling back layers of things that are blind spots. And this was a blind spot for me because Cole had asked me on multiple occasions, well, show me what you want.
Yeah, show me what you mean.
Show me what
I
you
don't
mean.
know what that
And I'd be like, well,
means.
no, you just do this and you just put your mouth here and you do this.
Or he'd
And
describe something and I'd be like,
and
he'd be like, like bubbles. And I'd be like, bubbles? What am I? Like, I don't understand.
so this was a huge thing in my body. Like I would get this tension and there was this hiding. And again, shame causes us to hide, causes us to posture, and it causes us to not actualize ourselves. I know it caused me to not actualize myself fully in my sexuality. And with somebody that I'm in a relationship that I'm afraid would leave me, and that all of my shame complexes and a lot of stuff that I've worked through in my life to decipher, this was a huge part of it for me. And this was a blind spot. And, maybe a week, 2 weeks ago, when we had this huge snowstorm here in Texas, and it doesn't snow in Texas. And Cole was like, "You never showed me those videos." Right. And so I was like, all right. So, so I went and I played a couple of videos for Cole, and she was like, "I think I can do that." And then, so there was this huge thing.
I'm a researcher. Like, I
There
need
was-
to see, I need
there was
to like,
this,
I gotta see it, man. I gotta see it. I gotta
there was
read
this-
about it.
There was this huge thing around Cole just being very listless with it. And I really didn't realize that she had no idea what she was doing. And so now she seems to know a whole lot about what she's doing. And it's been
I am
absolutely
a
amazing.
very astute learner. I like to be good at things.
And so we've been getting into a place where I've actually got my nervous system to calm down to be able to be in a space where I'm actually enjoying it, not feeling ashamed or not having ideas of shame that this woman that I love is doing something to me that I kept in the dark because it was bad. And all of these things are starting to come up.
Or that I'm just doing it for him, but I don't really want to. And there was a lot of energies to it.
Yeah. So all of this stuff has been coming back around, and my nervous system is a lot easier. And so I'm going to be 50 this year. And so for me to have a renaissance right now in my life, in my sexuality is awesome. And for her to have a renaissance in her sexuality right now, I believe is awesome for me. And,
I'm pretty ecstatic about it.
And listen, I've never seen her so excited about it. Like really before it was like, oh yeah, I'll do it, and now it's like, she's crawling under the bed, pulling my pants off. It's awesome. So, this is a thing, when you're diving into intimacy, I have an equation for it, and it's and when you're going into intimacy, there's an expansion. There's always an expansion, right? There's an expansion and an intricacy. And there's a equation. It's curiosity plus courage equals expansion. Curiosity plus courage equals expansion. I was always curious as to what it would, this amazing oral sex would be like from this amazing woman that I'm with. Didn't have the courage to actually do what she asked for. Okay. And now when I took that step, and that was all that I needed to do, click that courage point into place, and the expansion happened. And so the expansion is happening. You can have curiosity. If you don't match it with courage, you don't have expansion. You can have courage. If you don't match it with curiosity, you don't have expansion. So that's the place I've been working with all my clients, right? It's like curiosity plus courage equals expansion for all of these things. And I didn't have that click point to where it was, hey, there's a point of courage that you're not applying to something here. And I put the formula in action, and look what's happening now.
Well, in the curiosity and the courage, because as we spoke about some of the things that he was into desiring his whole life, really. And being able to learn communication in a way that isn't with shame language or blaming or pointing the finger, but he was just like, man, I just want to get my dick sucked. That's all I want, And I just said, yeah, I know you're saying that, but I see when you commit to something, and you haven't even showed me a video. So I'm just kind of questioning how much you've decided this is important to you, because if you haven't met me in that space, then there's something else going on, as far as deserving or self-worth or allowing yourself to have the things you want in your life in general, not just in this. This is one representation of pleasure, but where else is it showing up? And that was really the deeper dive that's been coming in as well. It wasn't just in sex. When we got into these conversations of really being curious, and he said, I don't want anything. I don't want anything. And I said, have you seen our Amazon cart? He's like, what do you mean? I said, go to our cart on Amazon and see how many items you've placed in the cart that you have not purchased for yourself.
Oh my God, that is so profound.
It was. And that's when it started to open the dialogue, that I was like, I'm seeing a pattern. That's all I'm saying. I'm not blaming. I'm not saying it needs to be different. But this idea that all you want is this one thing that gives you so much pleasure, but on a daily basis, you're denying yourself the things you can give yourself.
Yeah. And, it was a huge pattern from my childhood. I would ask for, my mother would, Santa Claus is coming and your birthday's happening, and I would ask for this and I wouldn't get it. And so I would ask for stuff for my birthday, wouldn't get it. Ask for stuff for Christmas, wouldn't get it. So I stopped asking because I knew I wasn't going to get what I asked for. And
you're going to get what you get.
And I was getting what I get. And it's the same thing with all the relationships I had in the past is if I asked for it, I was just going to get what I got. So I wasn't asking Kole for it because that's the pattern. And so
it is a really valuable thing to feel satisfied with what you have.
It is.
While not dialing down on desire. Like
Right,
it's the both and.
Right.
Yes.
It's the both and. And if something is being offered, well, what do you want? And then I ask for it and I don't get it. There's this function of disappointment. I'm not valuable enough.
Not
The
being
hurt.
seen.
All of these things were driving into my organism. And this was a pattern in all of the relationships that I had. All of the women that I was with, I would be like, listen, I want to have this kind of sex. Nope. I want to do this. Nope. I want to go this place. Nope. The same thing with all the relationships, the same thing with my friends. The only person that would ever give me what I wanted was me. And then I wasn't giving myself anything. So it was just this fortification of this cycle until I could start to become intimate with that cycle. And this is the thing. People are looking to be intimate with other people outside of themselves, and they're not intimate with what's going on in their organism. And so swinging it back around to what I was talking about when you asked me that question, that individual situation, that individual space, becoming intimate with myself allows me to become a partner that I can bring fully to the table. So she knows exactly what I want from myself and from her. I know, and I can encourage her to know exactly what she wants with herself so she can apply that to me. And then we have this intricacy together of two sovereign individuals that are fully intimate with themselves and empowered in that base.
And also not having the guessing. We see that in a lot of relationships. Like for us, we're very direct. What do you want? What do you need? And
because that sets you both up for success.
Yep.
Right. Because people go, well, like I had a friend just the other day, they were going to text somebody. And I said, okay, so text them, ask them if they're interested in going out. And this friend was like, well, what I'll do is I'll send this message. And then when they respond to it, I'll do this. And I said, that all sounds really complicated. Like, what if you actually just said, hey, I thought you were dope. Why don't we hang out sometime? I don't know what your current situation is. If you've got interest or space, I'd love to hang out. Boom. We from the beginning, that's what we said to each other is like, hey, can we operate differently and not do the game? I don't want to do the game where we hang out and then I wait 2 days and then hit you up, or I texted you too much. Could we actually just start this with, if I want to see you, I text you. If I'm calling you too much or you don't want to see me, you just tell me. Can we start that from here? And we both agreed, and that's continued to evolve, that now we don't have things go unspoken. We don't go to bed angry. And it's not the cosmology I was taught of never go to bed angry. It was more, we don't want to be in anger because we recognize that anger is hurt. So then the question becomes, what are we protecting? And then if I see that he seems angry or hurt, I want to know what's up. We made a commitment to ourselves to prioritize the other person's feelings because they matter to us, not because we've been in this marriage, not because that's the construct of how it's supposed to be, but we continue to evolve our commitment to ourselves and clearly communicating that commitment, and then asking the other person if they can support that. And that is what our union entails. So we remove expectation entirely. Not, oh, you went to the store, you didn't get me a kombucha. You know I love kombucha. No, if he's going to the store and I know I want kombucha, I ask him to get me kombucha. And sometimes he'll stop and grab me one, and that's bonus. But the idea that they should know me by now or ever, I'm ever evolving. And anyone that says they fully know me doesn't know me at all.
They're full of garbage. There's nobody that knows anybody more than the person knows themselves. And I can tell you from a person who has a grand amount of awareness or believes he has a grand amount of awareness about himself. I don't know shit about myself. Right. And I'm always finding out new things. Look what I found out a couple of days ago. Okay.
Totally.
Right.
Yes.
Look what I found out a couple of days ago. And so I am always evolving based on the things that I eat, the things that I drink, the conversations that I have, the things that I consume, the media that I'm exposed to. I am always changing. So in order for this relationship to evolve, we've got to remove the parentheses that keep us locked in.
Well,
right?
That's the thing. It's a trap.
We've got to keep ourselves out of that space where we're trapped into these rules and structures. We create a very malleable relationship. Our relationship is flexible.
Well, when you think about the idea of what you were just saying with that parentheses, to say that you really know someone leaves no possibility for them to be different, because you'll treat them the same, which will cause the organism or the body to go and continue to participate in the habits it's used to. So that's what's so challenging in relationships. When one person will first start to evolve, their expectations are changing, but the other person's aren't. And so there's this mismatch of dialogue and understanding where for us, I don't ever want him to think that he fully knows me, because if he does, then he's going to assume how I'm going to operate or function or respond. I want to be considered and asked.
I really love how you say that. And one of the things that, among the many things that I've enjoyed in this conversation, is hearing how the two of you give language to the things that I also deeply believe, live, and teach. And my way of talking about the sovereignty and being true to yourself and communicating in this way is, I refer to that as uncompromising intimacy, where we just do not compromise, but instead bring it all to the table and navigate from there. And the way that each of you speak about it is just so beautiful and mesmerizing. And I'd love to pivot into hearing. We'll have links in the show notes, but anyone who's as mesmerized by this conversation as I am is going to want to continue talking to you, following you. And what's the best way to do that?
I mean, right now, anyone that's got Clubhouse, following us on Clubhouse, the main conversations are intimacy, psychedelics for healing, for research, for PTSD, for legalization,
for optimization,
because even as all those initiatives are coming more mainstream with Johns Hopkins $17 million research center, there's also a big gap for people that if you're not sick enough, you won't get accessibility, right? So then you have to get just sick enough to be able to have access. So we're really here as part of the initiatives of education, and also for people as they explore those modalities, how to find what kind of clinicians, what questions to ask facilitators. And that is regardless of whether it's a doctor doing ketamine sessions or a shaman in Peru doing ayahuasca, that there's ways to discern and not pedestalize anyone to being the guru or expert of you. And so for us, most of that's happening on Clubhouse. Also, if you just do tahkole.com, that'll take you to some of our things.
Right. And, Kole is spearheading the whole theme around psychedelics, because we're interested in getting people to a space where they can be supported in finding the intimacy with themselves. And so that is Kole's work. My work on the sidebar, because I do intimacy coaching, people can reach me at Tah Online. It's TAHONLINE.com. You can click there. You can schedule an appointment with me to do a one-on-one chat around getting to know you and discussing intimacy. I do have an intimacy mastermind that will be opening up in April. I think April 7th. I think it's April 7th.
Okay, this will air shortly after that.
Okay. Yeah. And I have an intimacy mastermind that opens up. So I'm doing that. And let's get on the phone and talk. And
continue the conversation.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, May you, listener, take advantage. What a beautiful opportunity. I want to thank you both so much. As I said at the beginning, this is our very first conversation, and what a glorious one it's been. Any last words from either of you?
Yes. Thank you so much for having us. This has been absolutely wonderful. Thank you for the work that you do. Thank you for everything that you've endured in your life to get yourself into a space where you could create such an informative podcast for people to share and be able to grow within themselves. I am grateful for you. I am grateful for all that you are. And for the people who are listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking the time to broaden your vantage point, to have some curiosity and the courage to push the play button and listen to this for the whole time you've been listening to it. I don't need to know you personally or to be in your presence to know that I love you, because the word love for me translates into am, that is am. So when I say I love you, it means I am you. And I'm deeply interested in getting to know more of me through you. So have an amazing, amazing, fantastic day.
My final statement is you are magic, like Kapow. Everything you want is here right now, even if you can't see it, even if you can't taste it, envision it. It's right there if you will lift your head up, if you will close your eyes and perceive out of something besides what is right in front of you. Look for the synchronicities. Just you listening right now is not a coincidence. So whatever next steps is you're looking for, that sign that you're on the right track, I'm here to tell you that you are. To keep growing, keep expanding, because even 1 degree shift puts you in a totally different outcome 1 year from now. And so it's not always about the big transformations. It's not always about the big shifts. Sometimes it's that daily choice to do one thing a little, even micro bit different, to look down the road a year later and be like, oh, wow, I'm doing it. I got it.
I love that. A little
step at a time sometimes.
Every day, a little bit of courage, a little bit of curiosity, and the expansion is exponential. All right.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you for joining me for this episode of the Marriage Podcast. Please rate and review the show on iTunes. It really makes a difference. And if you have a question or a comment, reach out to me via my website at alexandrastockwell.com.